Hey guys, so this is we, and today we are going to talk about object-oriented programming with Kotlin. But before we start doing that, you guys need to know a little bit about object-oriented programming, right? So I'll just take a few minutes to just try to explain you what is object-oriented programming in a nutshell. Okay, so what is object-oriented programming? So in object-oriented programming, or languages related to that, everything, all the types, everything is actually object. Okay, so for example, if you are creating an integer, right, that's an object of some integer class or inbuilt class. Okay, so what happens in object-oriented programming is there are classes, there are objects, there are states, and there are behaviors. These 4 to 5 kind of things you need to make sure that you have, and there are some advanced concepts, like inheritance and polymorphism and all those kind of things. We'll be talking about that future tutorials when we'll be learning how to do inheritance and polymorphism and those kind of things in Kotlin. Okay, so you got the basic idea, right? So whenever you are working with ideology of object-oriented programming, all you have to do is create a classes. Now classes are templates for your objects. Okay, so for example, if you want to create a school management system or something, right, so you create a class for students. Okay, now that student, you are actually templating what should be there in the student. So you can say it should be enrollment number, the name, the address detail, the guardian details, all those kind of things should be present in the student object. So when you create a new student, right, you actually create that student or student object based on this template. Okay, so we can have some sort of type safety. Okay, for example, if you're creating now you have a template of student and you want to create a student object. Okay, let's take an example that student 001 you want to create. Now when you create a student, right, you know that this set of fields you actually need to fill to create that student. Okay, and that will be same for all kind of students, if it's student 1 or it's student 1 millionth. So there will be a symmetry between all of the students. So it will create a kind of like common structure for student, and that's how I think the whole notion of classes and object-oriented programming and those kind of things works. So let's get started. Okay, this is like very basic. There is a lot more things to do in object-oriented programming, but you guys don't need to worry about that. Once you get used to object-oriented programming, basics, you will figure it out, and you will just keep asking questions, and you'll just keep getting answers. It gets really deep. But let's not worry about that. It's really fun thing to do, object-oriented programming. And Java, as you know, is designed as object-oriented programming. So Kotlin is also something like that. Okay, then without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first we'll create a class. Okay, so what is class? In Kotlin, class can be created using class header and class body. Remember this structure. Okay. So in Kotlin, everything is this. Now to create a class, you need to have this keyword class. Now class header contains contains class name, constructor details, default parameters, and visibility modifiers, and some sort of annotations. Okay, we'll be taking a look at all those things one by one. And class body is nothing but your body, all of your properties, initialization blocks, and your member functions, and all those kind of things. See, it is that easy to create classes and in Kotlin. So let's get started. So let's create a class called student first. Class, I'll give a name student. Okay, and I'm going to create some properties. So properties going to be variables. So I'll just say variable first name should be string. Now variable, yeah, you need to initialize at the time of creation all the property. So it should be default or whatever, last name, because nulls are not allowed in Kotlin. That's why you need to initialize the property at the time of creation. String is equal to empty. Variable age will put, it's gonna be integer is equal to, see here age cannot go beyond 100 or 150, right? I mean, that's like the maximum age. So instead of that, we can actually put byte type to save some memory. Okay, this will be 8-bit, and by default we'll put age 0, because we don't want where address is gonna be string is equal to empty string. Okay, so these are like, and we'll just create enrollment number. Enrollment number is gonna be it can be a bigger, so I'm just going to be like, I'm just going to make it long because it can get to billions, 10 numbers or something, so it'll be like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 0. So this is like enrollment number. It usually are longer, so they define with something else, but if it's number, then we are just assuming this it's going to be number. Okay, so this is like your simple student class. You can see, right? It's very easy. You can just do main, and you can create variable student1, okay, is equal to, this is how you create object from that student class. Here you go. First name is, let's see if it's even valid or not. I don't think you can do something like this now. Unresolved reference, right? So you cannot do something like this. You have to create constructor for that. You cannot directly if you want to update these properties, right? So how are you gonna do those kind of things? How you update, how to create properties, So let's see, I'm just going to delete it out, and let's go to the constructor. Before going to the constructor, I just want to say you can actually create a class without body. Okay, this is like empty class. This is again a valid class. Okay, a class without any kind of body, just to create a new type that we can create. This will be useful when we are creating some sort of enumeration classes, or the class where you want to have some couple of options only. Okay, that's a future thing, don't worry about it right now. Okay, so this is how you create a class without body, but header, at least a name is required in the class field. These two parameters are required to create a class. And remember, all the classes by default are final classes. Like if you are from Java or something, like final classes are classes that you cannot overwrite, they are like the finalized. So in Kotlin, all of those things, right, you have to explicitly specified that you want this class overridable or not. That's kind of like inheritance topic. We'll again figure it out in future videos. I just thought it should be the message should be conveying to you that everything is finalized in Kotlin, because they don't have a concept of static, right? That's why. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this now. Okay, let's create a small object right now. Before that, let's go through the constructors. Okay, so what are constructors? So constructors in Kotlin are like two types: primary constructors and secondary constructors. Okay, now the primary constructors will have to be only one, and secondary constructors will be there can be many secondary constructors. Okay, that being said, okay, let's get started and create a primary constructor. So to create a primary constructor, right, you see, okay, what do you do after name? You write constructor, that's it. Okay, so this is now your primary constructor. So primary constructor is actually a part of your class header. Okay, and then you can take parameters like if you think that I just need like two fields which are required, is like first name and last name, and first name and last names are required fields. Let's just create I'll just take first name is gonna be string, and remember you have to explicitly specify the type in here. Last, yes, it's required, That's what I like. Okay, so here we created a constructor. Okay, now if you want to create an object, you can literally create the object using this primary constructor. How you do that? Simple. You just create variable student1, sorry for that, is equal to student with first name I'm just going to give AJ, know that I'm a student, and last name I'm just gonna give a B, MBJ. That's my surname. I know it's pretty long. I don't try to speak it out loud. Don't worry about that. You can call me VJ. That's cool, or V for short. Okay, so this is how we create a student. Let's just print it out. The student class student, but it's not going to print it out, I guess. So I'm just going to okay, I'm just going to like print ln the first name of the student is student dot see. And this is one of the really good thing. You don't need to create getters and setters in Kotlin. You can just do dot notation and you can just call this. It's really good. I mean, Java also they have this support, but for that if they need to be private and all those kind of things, right? But that's not in Kotlin. Okay, last name is Taylor. Student dot last name. Boom. There we go. Let's just compile and check it out if it's work or not. Okay, the first name of the student A and empty is A. Okay, so there is something wrong that we are not looking at. Okay, yes, you know what's wrong? Yes, because we actually got the property, but we didn't actually initialize these guys. Definitely you got the point. This was not intentional, but yes, now you actually figured it out, right? Just passing the parameters won't gonna cut it, so you have to initialize this. Now how you initialize it? So remember one thing, primary constructor does not have body, unlike Java. Okay, so primary constructor cannot contain any code. So you might be thinking, then how we initialize the code then? Really good questions. So for that in Kotlin they have initialization blocks. Okay, now you can write multiple initialization block. There is no limitation on how many you can write, but for the ergonomics, you should write 1 or 2 or 3 maybe initialization blocks. Okay, and the initialization blocks they will get called at the time of object initialization. So this is where you create an object. At the time these init blocks will be called. So let's see how to create. So to create an init block, you have to write init. I'll just print it out some. Init called. I'll just do something like that, and then I'm going to be like first name is gonna be like first name, and last name is gonna be like last name, right? So now what I'm doing, I'm initializing and I'm actually providing those things, those values to our properties. Let's see if it's giving us a desired result or not. See, init called, first name of the student is Vijay and last name is Bambania. So here you go. So this is, I mean, if you see the way it's defined, right, I just love it, the ergonomics, the way it's so clear cut, that init contains, init is init block, and you can actually write multiple init blocks, as I told you, but you will be like, then which one will be called first? Simple, right? I'll just show you. Second init. Okay, so they're called in order that they are declared. So this is like declaration of first init block, and this is second, so it should be like init called and second init called when we will be executing the code. Let's see. Yeah, init call, second init call, and so as you know, right, see, this is like the beauty of this. You can actually literally keep putting all the blocks one by one, and they'll be called. And remember, all of these init blocks will be called after primary constructor and before everything else, but yes, even these properties that we are specifying, right, properties or field of the they are like interleaved, so you can literally do something like control X. I'll just do, okay, it's all in order they are specified. Okay, so what we are going to do is I'm just going to create that something like this, okay, and I just make it like first init, and then I'm specifying all this, and I'm just gonna be like second init. Okay, now if you see, right, what's gonna happen is now when this init block is called, right, these properties are not actually, because everything is in order. So if you be like, you like to do first name is equal to first name, it won't work. Why? Because see, variable cannot be initialized before it's declared, right? So everything inside the class is in order of sequences. So this variable is not yet defined, so if you see, right, init blocks are nothing but just sort of like initialization functions, you can say that, which are executed in the same level as the variable declaration. So this everything is in order. It's not like that all the variables, when you compile and create an object, all the variables will, or fields or properties will be created first and then all the inits will be called first. No, they are at the same level, Okay, let's just compile and check it out if it's work or not. It's compiling successfully. Oops, it's taking a little bit longer. Yeah, first init call, second init call, and then it's all initialization and stuff. So you got the idea how init works, right? So this is how you initialize all of your fields in Kotlin. And as I told you, primary constructor does not have a body. So okay, and other short thing, okay, is you can actually declare. So for example, this thing, right, first name, last name, you don't need to declare like separately. You can actually declare here only. Just create a var. Yeah, this is very ergonomics. People tries to like write something like this. Now what happens in here, if you see, right, then you don't actually need to even do this. Sorry. Yeah, so as you can see now, this is how you declare your properties, declare and initialize. You can do something like this. This is how you declare. This is optional, this is like the default properties, but you can actually, so what happened in here now, the first name is actually a property of student class. Okay, and last name is also a property of student class, but we actually declared and initialized at the constructor level. Okay, let's see, it should compile again. Boom, first, second, see, there is no thing, right? So this is how you can, like for example, if you have like a couple of properties which are required and you don't want to actually, just put it out, it's again a good ergonomics to actually just put it down in here. Unless you have like a couple of properties, then you can just put it here and just be done with it. But if you like 10s or 15 of property and you are building some big class or something, you should actually put it here for the good documentation and good readability. I mean, that provides something like that. Okay, so that was all about init blocks and properties and primary constructors. Of course, you might be thinking that, oh my god, what if I want to do constructor overloading? Of course, we have something for that. That's called secondary constructors. Kotlin is like, they actually learn a lot from all the failures from other languages. It is nothing. It's actually just constructor overloading, but in a little bit of different way. So secondary constructors, right? Secondary constructors, when you create them, let's create a secondary constructor. So secondary constructors can be created using constructor keyword. That's it. And secondary constructors can have body. But remember one thing, secondary constructors needs to delegate to the primary constructors. Okay, so for example, let's create a secondary constructors where we are asking for first name, last name and age. Okay, so it'll be like first name string, sorry, last name, oh shit, oh sorry for that, last name is again string, and age is, I think we had a byte. So I created this constructor, right? See, now this is a new constructor where you are giving 3 properties. So what do, you actually need to delegate these to primary constructors or another secondary constructors, which actually delegates to primary constructors. But remember that, that you need to delegate, you need to call the primary constructor. That is the only way you create object in Kotlin. So secondary constructors, when you create, right, this is like a method that is actually pushed towards primary. So what in here is happening is this constructors will take everything and just pass it to this guy. Okay, for example, first name, because it requires 2 parameters, right? Last name, and the third thing is age is equal to age. Okay, and I'm just going to say secondary constructors called println secondary cons, I'm just call it cons. Okay, for constructors, big name. And I might not know the spelling, a lot of possibilities, right? Okay, so here the secondary constructors has been it's been created. Now let's just go, I'm just add the age 26. Oh, this student is really old. See, it's not throwing an error. Why? Because now we have this constructor in play. Okay, so let's just create and see how it works. Can we do something like this? Yeah, okay. The age is, boom, student1 dot age. There you go. Let's see. Nice. First, of course, initializes block needs to be fast. Then second, and then secondary constructor called. See, and the first name is okay. Let's see if the primary constructor is calling or not. Of course, you cannot check it out. Why? Because, but yes, we can check it out as if the first name and last name are like defined. Because if you see, right, we did in secondary constructors, we did not actually assign this first name and last name. We just assign age and age a property only. So then we actually written it delegated to the primary constructors that you refer using this class. Okay, this is the keyword to refer to the current context of the object of that particular class. But this here is a primary constructor, which is a class itself, right? So we are actually creating a class itself and returning it. So what is happening in here? So this constructor will call as a method, it will assign just age, and then it will return this new class. Okay, so this will actually call this constructor, and this will again go through the whole procedure before, and then it will assign all the first name, last name, and all the initialization will be called and stuff like that, and then it will come here and just do the age thing. So this is how you do the secondary constructors. You can write so many secondary constructors, you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so and all secondary constructors, this is like constructor overloadings, or parameterized constructors. If you are using Java or Scala or something like that, this is like that, but it's a very nice way of doing things. A lot of code reusability. For example, if you create a constructor, right, and these properties are something a very bit complicated, and a lot of complications are going on in here. So see, you don't need to worry about that. What you do, you just delegate to this thing, and it'll again take care of. So you are just writing code once, So I think this is one of the beauty of the Kotlin. Lot of code reusabilities and stuff like that. Okay, so that was the secondary constructor thing. And we also see how to define, declare and initialize the classes in here. Just you don't need a new keyword or anything. You just do where you call the student with all the constructors that we have, primary constructors or secondary constructors. Of course, and you might be thinking, what if I don't have primary constructors? Sorry. Okay, before that, I just want to say that if we don't have any visibility modifiers, right, like it's like private or something like that. If we will be talking about visibility modifiers in maybe a couple of videos, don't worry. But if you don't have something like this, right, all any kind of annotations like something like that, inject something like that, these are called annotations in Java or in Kotlin, right? Then what you can actually avoid this constructor. This is nice. So you can just directly write this and it'll just work fine, literally fine. I'm telling you why. Because you don't have any visibility modifiers, so Kotlin will assume that okay, this is just like this only, okay. And yeah, and yes, and the other thing is, what if you don't have any primary constructors? So we don't have any primary if you see this class, right, if you remove this, now we don't have any primary constructors. So this constructor does not need to actually delegate like this, because there is no constructor to call, right? So in that case, this will be then you will have to specify everything in here. Then we have to define the methods in here also. Properties. First name is string empty, where last name string empty. Okay, and I'll just do in here first name is equal to first name, last name is equal to last name. Okay, and it should work just fine. Let's compile it down and run it out, and let's just be done with it. This is really, I like it, the variations the Kotlin has, right? Okay, as you can see, everything works. So this is if you don't have any primary constructors. Still you can have a secondary constructor, but in that case you don't need to delegate to any primary constructors. Why? Because there is no primary constructor. So whatever constructor you have to initialize based on that. Brilliant. Okay, looks good to me. Okay, one more thing. Can we define the method properties from the secondary constructors? Let's see. I think we should be able to. Let's just see. Variable first name string. Yes, we can. This is brilliant. So you might never have to write any properties, where last name okay, no, see, you cannot define variables in secondary constructor, so it's kind of bummer for you guys. I just wanted to just make sure every possibility is taken care of, so you guys don't get confused. Yes, in secondary constructors you cannot declare and initialize your properties. That's only a job of primary constructor. Okay, so this is all about how to create a class, and the class header, and class initialization blocks, and class primary constructor, class secondary constructor. Okay, and let's talk more about classes in future. Okay, now before that, okay, I just want to give you a sneak preview of how to create a member functions in class. Okay, now the member functions, right, they are just functions, but one thing is they have access to context of the class. Okay, and second thing is their scope is limited to this object. That's it. Let's create a just simple function, print values or print student. Okay, it won't take anything and it won't give anything, but it's just going to print ln. It's just going to print it. Okay, I'm just gonna be like, first name is this dot first name. This is how you access it. Okay, plus last name, this dot last. This is again is the context of the class, you remember. Age, Easy peasy. Okay, so now we don't even need to actually print and do everything else that we did here, right? So whenever you create a class, you can just say student1 dot print student, right? Okay, print student. Okay, there you go. See, so you don't need to actually define, you can actually print it again and again instead of writing all those big print, right? You can just define it that object level once, and on all the objects you can just use that code. Boom. First, secondary, right? First name is Visual, last name is Bambania, age is 26. So as you can see, we can actually call this member function. So this is how the member functions work. You can actually pass parameters and all the functionality that function provides, right? It is applied in here. Okay, so the previous video of functions, all those things actually applied here. Just the scope the scope won't be a global, the scope will be at a class level. Okay, so you can access between this class and it will be called on that particular object. You cannot call without an object. Okay, and yes, you can access all of these state properties using this. That's it. So this is the whole crux of the object oriented programming is. Okay, and we'll be talking about there are other few things that we need to talk about, that we'll talk about in future tutorials. Don't worry, but this is like the basics of object oriented programming. This is actually good enough for you to get started with object oriented in Kotlin. And remember, these all class are like types only. So you created this, right? You can actually pass as a type, like the way we created this first name, right? You can actually, so for example here I can literally just say that this is a type student. Okay, and it should work. Why? Because we by creating a class, you are creating a type. So, and I told you, right, in Kotlin everything is an object of some particular class, and this is how the strictly type languages works. If you can take advantage of this phenomena, you will be, I can guarantee you, removing so many errors, because you have to define all those kind of things, right? And you just go through that strict notation, strict constructors, and all those kind of things, right? A lot of checkings will be done at compile time, and a lot of very errors will be solved and stuff like that. So yeah, this is it for the introduction to classes and stuff like an object oriented programming in Kotlin. Let's wrap it up for now, and we will be doing something good in future tutorials. Thank you very much, guys.